All right, let's just jump right in. We all copy people. It's just how we learn, right? But what if that one simple thing, that act of imitating someone, could literally cost you everything? We're going to get into a pretty intense story today all about how choosing who to copy can shape your entire life.
And it's a question that, honestly, most of us probably don't ask ourselves enough. Because according to the author we're looking at today, the person you choose as your role model, well, that's not just some small preference. He says it's your destiny.
He makes the case that this single choice can mean the difference between, a successful life and losing a decade to the system. And he knows this firsthand. The price he paid for his mistake, it really boils down to just one single powerful number.
14. Just let that sink in. 14 times. That's how many times he was locked up. From the time he was 18 until he was 34, his life was just this complete revolving door of prison. And he traces this complete catastrophe back to one single mistake.
And that's really the heart of his entire story. He's not blaming bad luck. He's not even blaming the system. He points the finger directly at himself, at his own choice to imitate the wrong people. So, how did it all go so wrong?
All right, so let's rewind. Let's go back to where it all started. His story, it doesn't begin with any kind of advantage. It begins with pure survival and this huge fork in the road he hit when he was just a kid.
I mean, we're talking about incredible hardship here. He escaped Vietnam, spent over a year in a refugee camp in Malaysia, and then his family lands in America with nothing. No English, no money, no connections. They had to settle in a poor neighborhood. It was the only place they could afford. And that's where he finds himself in high school, facing this massive choice, with two totally different ideas of what success looked like.
So you've got path number one, the smart kids. They're all about homework, talking about college, the future. And then you've got path number two, the quote-unquote cool kids, the local gang. To him, they looked like they had it all, the money, the power, the respect. And pretty soon, that choice was basically made for him.
See, poverty just slammed the door on education shut. He had to drop out of school to help pay the rent. And just like that, his world got a whole lot smaller. The smart kids, they were gone from his world. And the only role models left, the only ones he could see every day, were the cool kids.
So he started to copy them. I mean, completely. The way they talked, the way they walked, and what they did for money. Selling drugs, selling guns. And not path? Well, it led straight to his first arrest. Then another, and another. Until 14 years, an entire chunk of his youth, was just eaten up by the system.
Okay, so fast forward. He's 34. He gets out for the last time, and he's dead set on rebuilding his life. But the world is a different place now. And he sees the exact same problem he faced as a kid, this choice of who to imitate. But now it's happening on a massive global scale. He calls it the new bad neighborhood, social media. And this is where his ideas they get really controversial. He points to the famous Vietnamese influencer Ngoc Trinh as his main example. He says that from his point of view, everything about her online presence sends a very specific signal. And he uses this to launch into his whole theory about how men, in his opinion, instinctively categorize women.
So why make such a harsh distinction? Well, according to him, it's because men on some deep, primal level are looking for different things in different women. And they're making these split-second judgments based entirely on the signals that women are putting out there. He basically argues that men subconsciously put women into two buckets. Bucket one, women to marry. These are the women who signal, good character, family values. Bucket two, he calls them girls for entertainment. And his warning to young women is that if you imitate these entertainment figures online, you might accidentally get put in that second bucket in the minds of the men you meet.
So okay, after everything he went through, who does he think people should be imitating? He lays out a pretty specific code, and he starts with the guys, warning them to be super careful about who they look up to in today's world. And his warnings come right from his own life. First, obviously, don't imitate gangsters. He's Exhibit A for where that road ends. But he also points to the white-collar versions of that same trap. The financial scammers who get rich off lies, or the gurus who sell you a dream but never mention the taxes or the real work.
He even calls out those influencers who are always showing off their wealth, saying it's actually a sign of weakness, not strength.
So who should you imitate? He says to look for people who built their success on real, actual skills. The kind of stuff he had to learn from square one after getting out. He holds up people with real strength, people who fought through actual hard times. And yeah, he even puts himself forward as an example. A guy who hit rock bottom and built a real life from absolutely nothing.
All right, now let's switch gears and look at his advice for women. And it's just as blunt. He lays out what he sees as the path for women who want to become, in his words, high value and find a partner who's in it for the long haul.
So we should be really clear about what he means by that. When he says a high-value woman, he's talking about a woman who has the qualities that attract what he calls a strong man, not just for a good time, but for a lifelong partnership and protection. So what's on his what not to do list? Number 1, don't copy the entertainment stars on social media. But his most talked about point is about tattoos. From his perspective, getting a tattoo is a deliberate choice that, in his opinion, covers up natural beauty. And he sees that natural beauty as a really important signal of health and value to a potential life partner.
So who are the right role models for women, according to him? Well, they're the complete opposite of that cool crowd that pulled him in as a kid. He points to the wives of his successful friends as the ideal. He says these women are basically invisible on social media because their worth isn't tied to getting likes or attention. His advice is to focus on femininity, on family, and to imitate the women who are living these successful but quiet lives.
Okay, so when you put it all together, this really gets to his core belief about what real strength is. And this goes for everybody, men and women. In his book, it has almost nothing to do with how much money you have or how famous you are. This right here, this is basically his cheat sheet for life. It's his quick formula. And you can see how it all connects, right? For a man to be strong, he says it's about real skill and reputation, not just showing off. For a woman to be high value, it's about being discreet and family-oriented. And for anyone trying to get through tough times, a strong person finds the opportunity in the middle of a crisis, while a weak person just falls apart. This is his way of helping you spot what's real and what's fake. And this final quote really sums it all up. He's saying that real strength, your skills, your reputation, who you align with, it's like a magnet for opportunity. In his mind, a truly strong person could lose every penny they have, but that inner strength means they'll always be able to rebuild. And that brings us right back to where we started. His life is this incredible, dramatic example of just how powerful that one question can be. And look, whether you agree with all his specific and sometimes controversial opinions or not, his story kind of forces you to take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, who am I choosing to imitate?
What an intriguing premise to kick us off today. The idea that a seemingly simple choice like who you choose to imitate could fundamentally shape your entire destiny. It's a powerful thought, isn't it? Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. The profound impact of imitation on, personal development and your life outcomes. And our source for this isn't some, abstract academic paper. It's a deeply personal, really raw story from someone who literally paid an unimaginable price for imitating the wrong people. We're talking 14 years in prison.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable how this very personal journey leads to such practical, actionable insights. Our mission here in this deep dive is really to unpack the crucial role that environment and, maybe more importantly, role models play in shaping us. We'll be pulling out concrete advice for both men and women on how to choose wisely and, truly develop.
So as we explore this, maybe ask yourself, are you imitating the right person? Okay, so our author's story. It definitely doesn't start on easy street, not at all. His family's journey began fleeing Vietnam, then through a refugee camp in Malaysia, before finally making it to what they hoped would be the land of promise, America. But that land of promise, it didn't exactly roll out the red carpet. They arrived with basically nothing. No English, no money, no connections. Cultural outliers, really, just thrown into this strange new place. And the only place they could actually afford was a poor black neighborhood. That's where they had to settle.
And this challenging start, it presented an early fork in the road, you could say. Even with all that difficulty, the author actually tried, briefly, to connect with good students in high school. He remembers joining them, even though he wasn't, a great student himself, asking about homework, trying to follow their lead. And he recalls that feeling, discussing studies and the future. It felt strange, he said, but definitely positive.
Huh. But that path, that positive feeling, it closed pretty abruptly. Poverty basically forced his hand. His father made him drop out of school to work, had to help pay rent, cover living costs. So the door to education slammed shut. And his life just took this completely different turn. So without that daily influence of the good students, he kind of drifted back to his immediate surroundings. And he ends up imitating the quote-unquote coolest kids in his neighborhood, which meant the ones selling drugs and guns. And his reason, pretty straightforward, actually. In their small world, those guys had money. They had a kind of power. He admits he just imitated them blindly, picked up their slang, their habits, their illegal stuff.
And the consequence of that blind imitation, where it became devastatingly clear very quickly. As the author puts it, the police saw him struggling and decided to invite him to stay at the state's prison. And this wasn't just once. He says he was hosted by the state 14 times. 14. His life, basically from age 18 to almost 34, was just this relentless cycle in and out of jail. It really underscores the critical lesson here, doesn't it? The huge, immense price of imitating the wrong people, letting a toxic environment just swallow you up. So he finally gets out for good at 34, determined, to turn things around. But when he comes back to the world, he notices this new environment, one that, in his view, was maybe even more dangerous than the poor neighborhood he grew up in, and that's social media.
Right. And this brings us to how he sees social media's kind of dual nature. On one hand, yeah, he sees its power. It's a platform for people with real experience, real value like him. He hopes to share actual knowledge. He uses it to talk about his failures, his lessons learned.
Trying to help young men become strong men and young women become high-value women that good men want to marry. But then there's the flip side, what he calls the bad side. He says it's just a breeding ground for, his word is nonsense, tao lao in Vietnamese. Keyboard warriors, fake influencers, people spreading misleading information, distorted lifestyles, and young people just imitate them without really thinking critically.
Yeah, and this observation about social media's influence really hit home for him with this anecdote he calls the tattooed girl's story. Now, it's important we frame this right. This is from the author's very specific worldview, based on his unique life. Some of his takes might challenge how we usually think about things. So he talks about seeing this young waitress just covered in tattoos, wrist almost to her shoulder, like a whole zoo, butterflies, rats, tigers, dragons, snakes. And it struck him because from his perspective, from his time before prison, tattoos on women were super rare and usually associated with specific entertainment jobs or maybe sex work. The typical woman looking to get married almost never had tattoos like that, he says. So what's his conclusion then about this rise in tattoos being so common now? Well, his take is that this shift is a direct reflection of young people imitating these nonsense models from social media. Whether they realize it or not, in his view, they're kind of unknowingly turning themselves into what he primarily classifies as entertainment girls.
Right. And let's dive into that framework a bit more because it's central to his thinking. He basically states that in what he calls the primal male brain, women fall into two main groups. First, women to marry. These are women with good qualities, family-oriented, reliable, trustworthy. And second, girls for entertainment, for, short-term fun, fleeting emotions. Now, this is, probably a controversial concept for many, but it's absolutely essential to understanding the advice he gives next.
Okay. And he uses a specific example, right? Ngoc Trinh, the Vietnamese public figure. In his assessment, she's like the classic entertainment girl model. He believes her every action, word, how she dresses it all signals one message. I am for entertainment, don't marry me.
Exactly. And this leads to a really important point for you, the listener. If your goal as a woman is to be what he calls an entertainment girl, if you want short-term attention, fleeting fun, then in his direct words, go ahead, imitate Ngoc Trinh 100%. But if you desire to be what he calls a high-value woman, someone who attracts a strong man who can protect and care for you for life, then his advice is crystal clear. Actively avoid imitating anything about her, not her words, not her actions, not her style, nothing. Which, naturally, leads to the next big question he tackles. Who should you imitate?
Okay, so for women, if the goal is attracting that strong, successful man, the provider type, so you don't have to struggle financially, is very emphatic. Don't imitate the singers, actresses, or showbiz figures you see all over social media.
Right. His alternative is, it's pretty striking. He says, imitate the invisible women. Women like his own wife or the wives of his brothers and business partners. And why them? Because, he explains, not a single one of them has to work out of necessity. From the moment they married their husbands, money worries were gone. They managed the home, the assets, raise kids, live peaceful lives. Sure, they might work for pleasure, maybe start a small business for fun, but never because they have to. And crucially, he says you won't find them flaunting themselves on social media. He suggests they avoid it because their value isn't tied to public validation or, getting attention from other men.
So after saying who not to imitate, he boils it down. For women wanting that high value, it seems to be about cultivating femininity, discretion, and a really strong family focus. Is that it?
That's the core of it, yeah, according to him.
Okay. Now, shifting to men. The author's own 14 years. That's a pretty stark lesson right there. Imitating those crazy gangsters led straight to prison. That's burned into his experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And in today's world, he warns against what he calls paper idols, modern false idols. He specifically says avoid fraudsters like Trinh Xuân Quay of FLC or Tring Milan. Their only talent, he argues, is deceit, fraud. He makes the point that truly talented people don't need to defraud anyone to make money. It's that simple. Instead, he urges you, to imitate people who built things from genuine ability. Like himself, he suggests starting from absolute zero, no money, no friends, teaching himself business and investment after hitting rock bottom. He also brings up a specific caution about some online experts, particularly Bitcoin experts in the West, often Vietnamese guys, who talk constantly about investing but somehow never mention taxes. He explains, look, in Western countries, profit means taxes. There's no way around it legally. So he sees only three possibilities. 1, they haven't actually made any real profit. 2, the profit is tiny, negligible. Or 3, they're breaking the law, evading taxes. And his conclusion is blunt. You should not imitate such a person. The overall message here for men is focus on building real competence, real integrity. Don't get fooled by superficial success.
This whole idea, intelligent imitation, then leads us to another really interesting distinction he makes. True strength versus the trap of weakness. And he challenges something many people believe. Having money does not mean you are strong.
Yeah, and he uses a very pointed example here, Koa Pug. Apparently this guy is rich, travels constantly, but the author considers him one of the weakest men. Why? Well, according to the author's framework, the number one rule of a strong man is he never seeks to conquer or seek validation from others.
Okay, so how does Koa Pug break that rule in the author's eyes? He points to Koa Pug's constant online boasting about his money, the fancy food he eats, even about getting leg-lengthening surgery. The author sees all this as a clear cry for validation, which to him signals deep insecurity, weakness.
He even makes this really bold claim, saying, I dare say 99 out of 100 long-legged women would choose me over him. And his reasoning goes back to that primal level. Women, he argues, are evolutionarily wired to be attracted to strength, not weakness. And boasting in this context is just a flashing sign of weakness and inner insecurity, according to him.
So if money doesn't equal strength, what is the author's definition of strength? He says it means whether you have money right now or not, other people want you on their side. Strength means nobody dares to mess with you or your family.
And he connects this directly to long-term success. He asks, if you're truly strong, can you actually stay poor for long? He argues no. A strong man cannot be poor for long. Because his credibility, his connections, his relationships, they'll naturally bring opportunities his way. You might find a weak man who happens to be rich, like his Koa Pug example. But he insists you will never find a truly strong man who stays poor for years and years.
And he uses his own life again here, doesn't he? A really powerful example of strength when facing huge adversity.
Yeah.
2007, he had a heart attack, wiped out his finances completely with medical bills. Then, just as he was getting back on his feet, boom, 2012, another heart attack. And this time, his wife was pregnant with her second child. Again, totally broke. All the money just going to treatment, just trying to stay alive for his kids.
That's an incredible story, and what's really remarkable is the choice he made in that absolutely dire situation. Even lying there in the hospital, literally fighting for his life, he somehow discovered Bitcoin. And despite being completely broke, he managed to scrape together enough to buy his first 1 or 2 BTC, back when it was under $200. This, he highlights, is the difference. A weak person, they would have just given up, blamed fate, complained. A strong person, he emphasizes, finds opportunity even in the absolute worst circumstances. Okay, let's quickly circle back to the tattoo example we talked about earlier, just to get his final perspective on it. He basically says, look, natural skin is inherently more attractive than tattooed skin. Why? Because the primal male brain, shaped over millions of years, is drawn to natural signs of health and fertility. Things like smooth skin, long hair, a slim waist, wider hips. There's no program in our brain, he argues, that finds tattoos inherently attractive from that evolutionary standpoint. He even says a scar, maybe from an accident, holds more value than a tattoo because a scar tells a story of something that happened to you. A tattoo, however, is a conscious choice. And his point is, if that choice doesn't actually increase your value in this primal biological sense, then why make it?
Right.
So pulling it all together, the overarching message from our author's unbelievable journey seems crystal clear. Your life's success or failure, your happiness or suffering, it largely comes down to this one thing: who you imitate.
Exactly. So he offers these kind of quick scan formulas based on everything he learned the hard way. For women, if you desire a happy family, a strong husband who protects and provides, then imitate those discreet, feminine, family-focused women. Definitely do not imitate the entertainment stars you see flashing across social media. And for men, if you want to be wealthy and respected, imitate the truly successful entrepreneurs, the wise investors who built things with real skill and integrity. Absolutely do not imitate the fraudsters, the gangsters, or those weak, boastful rich guys.
And it really underscores why imitation, when you do it intelligently, is just so critical, doesn't it? It's like a shortcut. The fastest way to learn and develop. It helps you bypass years of stumbling around, making your own mistakes. It's a path to faster personal growth.
Right. And the author leaves us with this ultimate challenge, but also this profound piece of guidance. He says, look, if you feel lost, if you genuinely don't know who to imitate, then imitate him. Imitate someone who paid the absolute highest price for making the wrong choices, 14 years locked up, but then clawed his way up from rock bottom to build a strong, valuable life. He assures you, if you do that, at the very, very least, you will become strong. And when you are strong, he insists, success will eventually, inevitably follow. So this deep dive, drawing from such a personal, raw source, it's given us some incredibly practical, vital wisdom, I think. It really hammers home that consciously choosing our role models is just paramount for our own development, for our future.
Absolutely. Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. After hearing all this, what does it mean for you to truly identify and then actually become a person of real strength, regardless of where you are right now?